Hey there, guys. Dragon Master here, and I want to welcome you to Star Wars in Earth, Episode 15, Codename Frans Decision. So, I have one thing to say, and that is I'm sorry that I wasn't able to release on Sunday. I was a bit too busy, so I wasn't able to release the video. So, really, that's all I have to say. So, without further ado, let's begin. So it has been 10 years since Thrawn made his decision, and Thrawn had decided to join the Terrans. Basically, he saw that they would be much better for the galaxy than the Empire ever could be, as the Terrans had no problem with aliens. They were growing and working together, while the Empire had basically put people who didn't have much experience and technology that really wasn't safe for its own users to use, like TIE fighters, into battles. And Thrawn viewed that the Terrans were much better than the Empire, so he decided to join them and became captain of his own ship. It was the Normandy, Shepard's ship. He was captain of it, but he was getting a promotion now. You see, over the years, with the hundreds and thousands of refugees every day, every year, nonstop, which has now turned to millions of refugees, the Terrans are getting more and more crowded. So they realize that the colonies aren't really much represented in basically Earth. So they decide to reform United Nations Space Command into something new. And Thrawn had thought of a few ideas for a name when he talked to Hackett and Anderson. But Anderson and Hackett, along with many high-ranking captains, had come up with a perfect name for the new, Terrans, basically, government. And that would be, it would be called the Terran Alliance. This alliance would become the new military and government for all of Earth and its colonies. This new government would consist of its own Senate, with every planet that was colonized having its own representative in this new Senate, basically. And the military would be reworked into this new government that was forming. It would be one united, alliance of the unknown regions the Terrans were hoping. The Terrans had started replacing many of their ships with new advanced ships, coming through strike craft, new cruisers, and battle cruisers. These ships had high-end velocity cannons that basically could almost break through the Star Destroyer shields, as I already had mentioned. They could basically go up the toe with a Star Destroyer for a day or two at best, seeing as how long it would really take for them to basically fight a Star Destroyer. Also, the Terrans also recruited more people for the military. Many conscriptions and many people wanted to join, and no one really had a problem with joining the military, as many of the people fleeing were aliens who were basically had enough of the Empire and its cruel ways towards aliens. As for Thrawn, Hackett, and Anderson, they were all becoming high-ranking people in this new government. The government had decided for the Terran Alliance, the high command for the military would be put into, fleets, basically. Every fleet would have its admiral, and there would be 5 fleets, basically, to make it fair for voting. And for each fleet would basically have 2 high captains to govern it alongside the admiral. There would also be a high admiral just to make sure that no one was abusing their power, as the high admiral would be able to take away any admiral's power. Anderson, Hackett, and Thrawn were the first people to come basically for names to become admirals, and they gladly accepted. Hackett, who did better in space battles and commanded fleets, became the first admiral of the first fleet, and Anderson became the second fleet, while Thrawn became third fleet's admiral. As for the fourth and fifth seats, both seats were eventually filled by 2 people, and their names were Rex and Garrus. Rex and Garrus were good friends with Shepard. Rex had become head of all of the Krogan clans. He had worked his way to the top, and he had become friends with Shepard as they traveled over the years. And Garrus was a perfect choice. He had ranked up through the Turian's hierarchy, basically, and become basically leader of his own small fleet after he had left Shepard's crew. Each fleet had its own purpose. The first fleet was to basically guard Earth and the inner colonies, while the second fleet was to guard the mid two colonies. And the third fleet was to basically guard the outer colonies, also colonizing other colonies and making peace with other alien civilizations and bringing them into the Terran Alliance. The fourth fleet basically specialized with special troops to deploy in war times. And the fifth fleet was basically to specialize in assassination and also covert spying. And this was perfect for Rex and Garrus. This was one of the two reasons both had been chosen. Rex was perfect with the special troops, which would mostly be made up of Krogans. And Garrus was an excellent sniper and assassinationer. He also would do well as a spy. And for the High Admiral, it was Janeway. Janeway would become the High Admiral for the Terran Alliance. Janeway had experience in fleet as she served under Hackett. Hackett was originally supposed to be High Admiral, but he thought Janeway would be a better choice as he was getting older and she was still a bit younger than him. So also she was very good when it came to negotiations and would do well as she wasn't easily corrupted by power. With this, all the basically admirals and high admiral had been chosen, and the Terran Alliance's military leadership had been set up. Also, on other news, many other new species had been discovered, and one of these new species were the Asari. The Terrans had found their planet, and the Asari were starting to get ships up working, so they were about to begin their own exploration of the galaxy. But the Terrans arrived at their planet and offered them to join them about 5 years ago, basically 10 years after the Galactic Empire was formed, and the Asari accepted and became members. The Terrans noted that the Asari's beauty was basically matching of the Twi'leks, and another interesting fact was the Asari were basically, they all looked female, but from what they heard is that, well, I don't really know. So let's continue on. Another basically species that was discovered was the Solarians. I'm pretty sure that's what they're called. They had been discovered a year after the Asari. Also, I just realized the Asari don't really see themselves as male or female. So yeah, but back to the Solarians. The Solarians were quite intelligent, but they hadn't really focused much on space travel until the Terrans arrived. The Terrans offered a place for the Solarians, but it took them at least a year before they finally decided to join, as they needed time to decide. With this, 2 new species had joined up with them. The last species they discovered, and this was recently, only a couple of months ago, was the Volus. The Volus, like the others, hadn't really had much space travel. They had mostly stayed on their planet. The Terrans had offered them a place, and the Volus agreed to join them. The Terrans saw that the Volus were good with money, and they decided to put them to work with the other bankers, and I forget what the species is called for the bankers of Star Wars, so sorry. Basically, they would work with the Terran's bank system and make it much better than before, increasing income to many other people across the Terran Alliance, along with making the economy much better. So basically, they would join them. Also, as for the Rebel Alliance, recently, 2 years ago, basically 13 years after the Galactic Empire was formed, Mon Mothma and Bail Organa had come to talk to Hackett, Anderson, and Thrawn. They met in a small meeting room privately on Earth, It was under heavy security, and the Terrans made sure that the Empire couldn't listen, as the Empire had many Imperial spies around the Terran Alliance to look for Jedi. Mon Mothma and Bail Organa had offered the Terrans to join them in their rebellion against the Empire in secret, but the Terrans were hesitant, as many rebellions had risen against the Empire, and all had failed. Thrawn thought it wouldn't be a smart idea, as currently Mon Mothma and Bail Organa's rebels, basically forces, were quite small and would even stand a chance against the Empire, he thought. Hackett and Anderson were a bit more understanding, but they didn't know if they should. But both agreed that they should at least try to help these rebels. So they basically offered to give them money and food, basically, any supplies they needed, but they would not offer troops. And Bail and Mothma said that was fine. It was the best they could get out of this deal. Thrawn wasn't happy about this, so he left. A year later, Thrawn basically talks to Bail Organa and gives him some interesting news. Thrawn tells Bail that he has heard of a small little rebels that have been causing trouble on the world of Lothal, and he suggests to Bail that he should try and recruit in them, as Bail was trying to recruit people with talent to help them fight the Empire. And Thrawn decided, since they had basically teamed up with the rebels, that he should help them at least get stronger. So he told Bail that he'll find them on Lothal, and then left. As for the Jedi, Shepard hadn't had much luck. He had found a few Jedi, but not that many. He had met someone named Cal Kestis, but this Cal Kestis had decided not to join the new Jedi Order. He had given them a holocron that showed all of, well, talented Force-sensitive children across the galaxy. But he told them to be careful, as if the Empire found out about this, they would they might track the Jedi down and kill them all. So Shepard thanked him, and Cal went on his way. He gave it to Mace Windu, and Mace Windu agreed to go find all of the Jedi on this, all the Force-sensitive children on this list, and he went off. Over the past years, he's been collecting Jedi with the help of Shepard's crew, which had grown with many new allies on the crew. People like Liara and Morden, and many others. Shepard had become captain of the Normandy after Thrawn had been promoted to admiral. He gave Shepard control of the Normandy and was now under one of Thrawn's high captains he had chosen. And one of the new missions Thrawn had for Shepard, now that he was captain of the Normandy, was to work with these rebels in secret, but to also gather information on a project. He had used Terran spies and had learned little information, but he had found out that many resources of the Empire were going, well, basically to a strange place that no one knew about. So he ordered Shepard, while working with the rebels, to basically, in secret, to gather information on this. And that was Shepard's mission. So Shepard went off. Thrawn then went to the bridge of the ship and then headed for his next destination. He needed to find more colonies for the Terrans to colonize. Thrawn stared into space, and for the past couple years, he had questioned his decision, but his mind always came to the one conclusive point. He had made the right decision. He thought the Terran Alliance name was a bit of a funny name, in a way, but it was a good name. He then went into hyperspace and went off to the deep into the unknown regions, and that is where we are going to leave it off. So I have at least one thing to say before we go, and that is next Sunday there will be no video. Next week, the week after that week, there will be episode 16 will be released. So yeah, that's all I have to say. So without further ado, please subscribe to the channel, comment down below, and goodbye.